Awareness is still one of the biggest problems change managers face. You know that moment when you mention a project you're supporting to someone in an impacted team and they look at you like they've never heard of it before and you're thinking, how's that possible? From the project team's perspective, it can feel like you've already communicated the change a lot, but from the organisation's perspective, the message often hasn't landed yet. In this episode, I'm going to talk about why that happens and share some practical ways I've found to increase awareness by focusing on how people actually work during their day. Welcome to the Applied Change Management podcast. I'm Rose, and after more than a decade working in change management, I started this podcast to share practical lessons from the programs I've worked on. Today, I'm going to focus on awareness and how your change will land faster if you focus on the environment the teams are working in. Awareness is crucial because, and it feels pretty silly to say it, but it's true, people cannot prepare for a change they're not aware of. It's the first step on pretty much every change plan for engagement. But I bet you aren't communicating the change as much as you think you are, and I bet the impacted group aren't hearing all of it. I don't actually have to bet because I've found confirmation of it. Not only in various studies and articles, but I see posts on LinkedIn about frustrations around it all the time. We all understand the need to drive awareness. The issue is that, as we sit in the project delivery group and breathe the change all day, every day, we overestimate how much information we're sharing. We overestimate how well people are hearing the messaging as well, and if they're remembering it in the noisy, busy environment they work in with 1,000 other projects being implemented at the same time. Because to us, it's our every day and it's important. To them, even though they need to know about it, we're noise. We're not their priority. A key approach I find helpful is to always put the role and how they work and communicate at the centre. And yes, I know we say we do this, but if we do, why is awareness still a problem? I've seen articles about too much communication and not enough information as a cause of lack of awareness. That might be true to some extent, but what I've found is that the information channels we're choosing aren't making it easy for the impacted group to receive it. And it has to be made easy for them because we're asking for something from them. We're asking for their attention, brain power, and down the line, we're asking them to take training and prepare for a change. Finding time to do that is a challenge, so let's at least make that first part easy. Be easy to find, make the information relevant to them. What I found over the years is that awareness becomes much easier when you stop thinking about communication channels first and instead think about how people actually work during their day. Because the reality is that most organisations have a mix of working environments. People aren't all sitting at a desk reading the same update. Some people are travelling, some are in offices, some are fully remote, and some move between several environments during the week. When you start thinking about awareness through that lens, the approach becomes much clearer. So the 4 environments I usually think about are field teams, office-based teams, remote teams, and hybrid teams. And each one needs a slightly different approach to make them aware of the changes coming their way. Field teams are usually the hardest audience to reach if you rely on traditional project communication. They're people who are travelling, visiting customers, and sitting in their cars between appointments. Their phone is usually the main device they use during the day. What I found works well with field teams is short, mobile-friendly communication. So instead of sending a long written update about a project, I've had much better success in recording a 1-minute video update explaining what the project is and why it matters. It's something they can watch quickly on their phone while they're between meetings. You could set up a podcast about the change as well, and then that's a place where they know they can get updated information while they're on the road. Another approach that's worked well for me is using the communication channels they already rely on, things like internal messaging platforms or team chat groups where operational updates are already shared. Then at least we're not asking them to change their habits as well as their work. The key thing with field teams is that if the information needs them to sit down, open a laptop and read a document, the chances of them seeing it are quite low. But if the information is short, mobile friendly and pops up in the channels they already use during the day, awareness spreads much faster. Office-based teams are usually easier to reach, but they experience the same problem of competing priorities. Office teams are likely to attend town halls or all-hand meetings, so one thing I've done in the past is make sure the project is mentioned briefly in those forums early on. Even a short mention from a leader can significantly increase awareness because suddenly the project becomes visible to a much wider group. And if the leaders mention it, it must be important. Not everyone can come to those meetings though, because they might be supporting customers on the phone or be tied to their desks because of something else. Then an approach that works well is a short email update with an embedded video. Instead of sending a long written explanation, you send a short message that says something like, here's a 2-minute overview of the project and what it means for your team. People are much more likely to watch a short video than a long update. And if people are physically in the office, visibility can help. Things like internal screens, intranet banners, or posters in common areas can reinforce the message, even though they might feel a little bit outdated. Because people are still people, and when people see the same project mentioned in multiple places, awareness tends to build naturally, no matter how old school the approach is. When we consider remote teams, we have to remember they rely almost entirely on digital visibility. If the project doesn't appear in the digital spaces they use every day, it can almost feel like it doesn't exist. So what tends to work well here is placing awareness messages in the collaboration platforms people are already spending time in, things like Teams channels, Slack groups, or internal chat spaces. Just because the teams are remote doesn't mean they don't meet. Get into virtual team meetings or daily stand-ups of your impacted group to let them know about the changes as well. Another useful approach is creating a simple intranet page or internal site where people can quickly understand what the project is and why it matters. Then you can link to that page from different places so the information is easy to find when people need it. The key with remote teams is consistency. Because when everything is digital, the project needs to appear on all those digital environments quite a lot before it really registers. Hybrid teams are interesting because they move between several environments. Some days they're working remotely, some days they're in the office, and sometimes they're traveling or meeting customers. What I found works best for them is using several touchpoints rather than relying on one channel. You might mention the project briefly in a team meeting, follow up with a short video update, and then reinforce it again through an internal platform. Hybrid teams will miss single-channel communication simply because their working environment changes throughout the week. But when the same message appears across several environments, awareness builds much more reliably. So the main takeaway here is that awareness really isn't about sending more communication. It's about making sure the project appears in the environments where people already work. When you match your approach to how people actually spend their day, whether that's on the road, in the office, at home, or moving between locations, awareness becomes much easier to build. And that's the first step towards successful change. Thanks for watching or listening to the Applied Change Management podcast. If you found this week's episode helpful, please follow, like, comment, or share within your network, and come back next week for more Applied Change Management topics. I'll see you there.